Every natural disaster now, you can count on two things. One, Scott Morrison will somehow be blamed. And two, so will global warming. Floods, droughts, doesn't matter. We saw today these two things come together when the Prime Minister finally got out of COVID quarantine to visit Lismore, which was badly hit by the floods. And no surprise it was, by the way, sitting out there on the floodplains of two rivers with the local council and the New South Wales government not having the brains to put up proper levees. Well, the atmosphere as Morrison arrived was menacing. Police fanned out to protect him from trouble even before the protesters arrived. Many of them global warming protesters of the most irrational kind.
Where were you? Where were you? The water is rising. No more compromising. The water is rising.
Scott Morrison, though, wasn't taking any chances. The media was banned from following and filming him as he met locals. And the Prime Minister was scared, basically. He couldn't afford more humiliation on primetime TV like he suffered 2 years ago during the New South Wales fires, when he came home from a holiday in Hawaii to be treated like a leper by locals.
How are you?
I'm only shaking your hand if you give more funding to our RFS. So many people here have lost their homes.
That was just so terrible. Scott Morrison wasn't risking that kind of thing a second time, being filmed getting abuse. And abuse was sure coming. It's in part because Labor has been demonising the Prime Minister, accusing him of somehow being to blame for the flooding and for the allegedly slow rescue of people, which actually is a responsibility more of the state government and local councils, but who cares? There's an election in a couple of months, and Labor really wants to lock in Scott Morrison's image as a Prime Minister who doesn't show up in a disaster.
Sitting in isolation over the last week, at any point in a week, he could have picked up the phone, declared a national emergency, got these things happening. Has he got to wait until he's surrounded by TV cameras before he does it?
So Labor was really salivating over Scott Morrison's visit to Lismore, hoping for the worst. And Labor frontbencher Jason Clare sounded cross that Labor had been robbed, that the TV cameras couldn't film Morrison being monstered by locals, something that Clare really seemed to want.
If you've been stuck on a roof for days with your kids and the dog and you got rescued by the next door neighbour and you run into the Prime Minister on the street, you're probably going to give him, a pretty good mouthful. And I think it would be a good thing for him to do. I think his standing in the community would rise, not fall, if he was prepared to talk to the people that have been affected and let the TV cameras see it.
Yep, and Jason Clare would be sitting out the back handing out rotten tomatoes to anyone that would care to grab one from him. Really, that sort of stuff is pathetic and a little bit nuts. Still, it's the kind of stuff that helped G up journalists at Morrison's press conference this afternoon to go, pick, are you going to apologise? Are you going to apologise? I mean, really? But for what? What on earth is Morrison's big sin here? Well, some say, Scott Morrison didn't build enough levees, which may be true, but nor did Labor, and nor did the New South Wales state government, and nor did the Queensland government, and nor did local councils, and nor did Greens even demand them. In fact, they don't like that kind of stuff. Other journalists say, Morrison didn't take global warming seriously enough. Now we've got the consequences. One journalist even asked the most idiotic question on that very point at Morrison's press conference.
As more Australians are impacted by extreme weather events, are you concerned that more and more people are going to become very angry because they don't think your government is doing enough to wean Australia off coal and other fossil fuels?
I mean, give me a break. Let me say what Morrison only hinted at, trying to be political he was. Let me be honest. The idea that your Prime Minister could have stopped the rain, could have stopped the floods by cutting Australia's emissions is frankly insane. Morrison could shut down every factory, every power station, scrap every car in the country, and he still would not stop a single raindrop from falling. We're too small to make that kind of difference. That's just magical thinking. It's primitive superstition. I mean, it's just, it's a religious mania, really. And finally, Scott Morrison is blamed for not sending enough soldiers fast enough to help with the rescues and the clean-up. Well, in fact, the Australian Defence Force has sent 2,000 personnel so far, and they'll be up to 5,000 by the end of the week. Besides, and I went into this, last night, why pick on the ADF when there are so many other essential services and volunteers and police also helping, and when our Defence Force actually did rescue more than 100 people in just the first few days? Why assume that thousands of soldiers are actually just sitting around doing nothing, bone idle, waiting just around the corner from where you live to be right on the spot the very second that all hell breaks loose unexpectedly near your house? I mean, be real. But the reason that the ADF is being attacked, of course, is because it is the one group helping that comes under Scott Morrison's area of responsibility. So it's the one group that Labor can blame him for. And that's why the ADF is being smashed, including by foul people who've been G'd up into abusing our soldiers in the street. I mean, the kind of hecklers too lazy to even get out of their cars and actually help.
Any chance you could get to Lismore? Oh, I hope so. Day's over.
Doing a good job, guys. That trailer ain't going to empty itself, is it? Make sure you get it filmed. This is incredible. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Well done, fellas.
I mean, how cheap and nasty, that kind of stuff. Pure scapegoating. Leave the soldiers alone, you peanuts. And the politics of it all is so obvious. But the problem is, of course, this kind of hate politics does tend to work.